everyone, it's Silvia from Fella Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Now, before I say anything about the video that I'm going to show you today, I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the really beautiful, actually beautiful comments of all you beautiful people that had the courage and the guts to share your experience after you watched my latest video. Decks I've been fallen in love with in 2023. It was not my intention to get so personal in that video, but it just happened, and so I shared a very personal story, and while I was talking, I was thinking they're all gonna tell me that I'm crazy. But you know, it's something that I think that it actually brings people together. Whenever someone has the courage to say something, to share an experience in life, and they don't mind the consequences like I did. I just, you know, I wore my heart on my sleeve and I just showed you basically something that happened to me, and it was really heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time to hear the numerous stories that you felt safe to share with me, and that was the heartwarming part. And the heartbreaking part was that some of those stories were really, really sad, of course. So thank you, really thank you so much, because it helps me process something, and in my turn I can also help you process it as well. I think that that's the only way in which you can actually process the grief of losing someone. And whenever something magical happens to cheer you up, you really want to believe in that, and hearing your experiences really convinced me that what happened to me was actually true, was actually real. Now, I realized that that sounds a bit odd, in the sense that if you haven't watched my latest video, of course you don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to spoil it. So if you want, you know, it's the deck, the video in which I talk about the decks in which I fell in love with this year. And there's a lot of people that really share in the comments below, share their experiences, their beautiful experiences. So anyway, today I'm just going to show you some decks that came into my collection recently, because there's been a few more than expected, and I really like them. So let's have a look. So the first deck that I'm going to show you today is the Abyssal Tarot. It's on the photography, based on photography by Shelley Corbett. It has been written by Stephen Albom. Now, before I zoom in, I just want to point it out that I took some wisteria from the backyard probably a couple of hours earlier today, and I thought to myself, I better film quickly before it wilts. It's already wilting. Anyway, it's really beautiful, and it's the perfume is very strong, very nice. But let's zoom in, because I can show you the cards a bit better if I zoom in. I don't know if you're familiar with this deck. I am, in the sense that obviously I got it knowing what to expect. I bought it from one of the Facebook groups I'm in, so it's a second hand. It belonged to someone that you know, didn't really use it because they didn't connect with the deck, which is fine. And I think that this deck, it's either you hate it or you love it. I've watched walkthroughs, but walkthroughs don't really tell a whole story. You really need to have something in your hands, because especially for me, for example, the tactile experience is almost as important as the visual one. Not to talk about the fact that in many walkthroughs, not that it's bad quality, but you just cannot tell. And there's something else that I learned by making videos, is that when you film with an iPhone, unless you use raw settings, the iPhone has already a lot of manipulation, let's say, happening on recording. So basically on camera, even though technically it's not on camera, there's a lot of sharpening going on. There's also a little bit of a saturation being tweaked. And that, as a result, it kind of prevents you to have an actual idea 100% of what you're looking at, even though 99% of the time, of course, you will know that what you're looking at, it might be slightly different than what you get, but there are cases in which the differences are actually very, very strong. So all this to say that I really wanted to have this tarot deck in my hands and have a feel for it and see whether I like it or not. As you know, I used to be a photographer. I used to work as a like a video documentary producer, a TV show producer on photography in Australia. And so I met with many photographers during the years, all of them professional photographers, some of them, in the fine art world, some of them, one of them that I know very well, Jason Atwood, for example, is a National Geographic photographer. I met with, many personalities here in Australia as well. People who used to work with Mel Gibson in movies, for example. And I have to say something. Photography is becoming nowadays very conflicted. Let me explain why. And basically, because of the advent of, let's say, computer-generated manipulation and AI-generated art based on photography. So as you know, AI can be based on illustrations, for example, but it can also be based on photography. There is a movement which is actually becoming stronger by the day, for what I could notice. Photographers that want to go back to a primitive form of photography. So, for example, when we talk about the sandwich technique, which is stacking one photo, one negative on top of the other, it's very easy to do that on your computer now. No one turned their noses to that, or at least they didn't used to, because it's something that it was not seen as computer manipulation. It was simply that process you used to do with the negatives, and you just do it in exactly the same way with the computer. Nowadays, I've got actually people that they are going back to do that, in the camera obscura, in the darkroom. And not just that, not just referring back to techniques, for example, but I'm also talking about going back into the wild without any kind of instrument. So I hope this doesn't come as a surprise to you, but I have been working in that environment, and I can assure you 1000%. Whenever you see the wildlife photographer of the year, the winner, etc., there's always, it's not just a camera. It's not just a camera. I hope it's not something controversial. It's something that is well known. There's many photographers that are admitted using remote controllers, for example, motion triggered remote controllers. So they were actually sleeping back in their hotel when their camera took that famous photo that then ended up winning the first prize. I don't want, this is not the space to do any kind of criticism or even discussing about it. What I do notice is that we went from that, okay, to a people literally going back to the very first idea of photography. When you feel that, I believe that you also feel it when looking at a photo, not just when you're taking a photo, but also when you're looking at a photo. And so knowing the work of Shelley Corbett, I really wanted to see this tarot deck. It sounds like a convoluted way to introduce this, but you wouldn't believe the amount of comments that I posted something on Instagram a couple of months ago about photography, not my tarot account, my photography account, and you wouldn't believe the amount of really almost really upset and angry comments about you know, I was talking about photo manipulation as if it was something normal, and I got literally dozens of comments saying, no, absolutely not, this photo was not obtained with photo manipulation. But let me assure you, as a photographer and someone who's been working in photography for so many years, alongside very famous photographers as well, it's not intended to be a bad thing at all. So I'm actually very curious to know what you think about it, because this, to me, all of this is to prepare you for what I'm going to say about this deck. So please don't shoot the messenger. So this work is manipulated. What I mean with that is not AI manipulated. I wouldn't even dream of calling it AI. Also because, honestly, this was produced in 2005. Okay, so back in 2005, there may have been some form of AI, but it wasn't even called AI, it was called machine learning. I remember I was watching the X-File, one of the episodes. By the way, there is nudity here. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. Apologies for that. There is nudity. It's a very tasteful kind of nudity. There's no, it's just a human body. This is how we look. Or, you know, most of us, obviously. But so I was watching X-File, and there was one episode in which there was this computer that was literally going off on its own and killing people by, you know, making them drop in the elevator when they were inside, and so on and so forth. And that was a very first attempt at criticizing, or at least giving some sort of a, how would you say that, a fictitious rendering of what was going on in the world of technology related to machine learning and AI. What I mean by manipulated in this is that obviously there is a lot of in-camera manipulation. The shutter speed is set at a certain, probably 1/60th of a second. I'm thinking, I don't know, I don't actually know, but it might be even lower than that. The reason I say that is because the images look blurry, not by mistake, but by effect, by volition, on purpose. So one way of doing that, obtaining that, is to have a shutter speed that is pretty low, let's say. So whatever you're taking a photo of looks as if it's moving, even though perhaps it's not even shaking, not much. This is called camera shake. And I'm not going to go into details because I really don't want to have any kind of, I don't want to invite any kind of discussion on it. I'm just here to show you how much I actually admire this kind of work. Because it is something that needs to be said. There is intention in these cards. There is a lot of thoughts behind the representation of certain of some of these images. And there's also something else to be said about this deck, that it's something that perhaps is not very clear, because I'm referring to whatever sentences or keywords are written on the side. And unfortunately, because of a choice of, let me see if I can show you this way, because of a choice, let me say, not the best choice of font and not the best choice of colors. So you have two lines that are white, and you also have the characters that are white with like a shade of black. So it's not always very easy. Let me see if I can, if I zoom in like that, can you tell that it says best friends? Okay, so basically there are sentences and keywords on the side. It's not that easy to read them. You, in some cases, even with my glasses on, I'm actually wearing my reading glasses right now, I actually have to bring them up and try and decode whatever is written. But all this, and it's probably out of focus now, sorry about that. So all this is saying that basically there's some kind of association between the traditional meaning of the card. For example, we see the devil card here with best friends. Obviously, that is made on purpose. You have room for discussion there. Why would the creator or the person who chose the association, you know, bring together the shame, the, let's say, the vice, the distraction, the ego of the devil with the words best friends? Are these your best friends? So are you indulging in the things that make you be ashamed of yourself, for example? There's a discussion that it's going on, and you will see that in each and every card. In some cards it's not necessarily, let's say, straightforward. But in many other cards it is. For example, this is the Six of Cups, and here, let's see if I can, hello, zoom on my, okay, wish to tell. Now, wish to tell with the Six of Cups obviously brings you back to that time in your, perhaps your youth, or a time in the past in which there was alignment, you felt grounded, you felt safe. And there is this wish inside of you that is to bring you back to that time. A time in which, unfortunately, we were not even aware that it was passing. Because you only know when something is gone once you lose it. So that time in which we were living on the Six of Cups did not feel like a Six of Cups, I can assure you. So the wish to tell, for me, it's my interpretation of the card, is bringing us back to the conviction that we have that whatever was best is either behind us, or if you're optimist, in front of us. This is not necessarily the truth. It's something that we need to grasp, and it's something very important that we need to understand, that if we live that way, we're either stuck in the past, or we're anxious, always, let's say, feeling this pressure about the future, and that's definitely not a good way to live in the present. Generally speaking, I like the way in which there's these association, these names. Sometimes there's an actual name. I saw Lilith earlier, for example. Sometimes it's sent messages, sometimes it's just keywords. I think this one, for example, grandmother's footsteps with the Six of Wands. Now, you all know the Six of Wands is the card of victory, and whether you like it or not, you're acclaimed as the victor, the victorious person, simply because you had a team behind you that brought you up. So grandmother's footsteps, you're walking on your grandmother, on your ancestors' footsteps. You have been propped up by giants, and therefore you can see even further. Don't for a moment believe that whatever you have achieved, you've achieved it by yourself. Even though it may feel like it, but you still are the product of someone that came before you. So I really, really like this deck, and what I want to show you, well, just a couple of words about the production value of the deck. It feels a bit flimsy. Very thin cardstock. However, it is a really beautiful, I like the feel, the tactile feel to it. It's not glossy, it's actually, I would say, matte to semi-matte finish, which means that ironically the colors of the photos could pop out even more had it been glossy. But then again, we would have had the usual problem of, the catching the light and so on and so forth. So I'm not complaining, I actually like it. These are the backs. Beautiful, referring back to the 4 elements. Again, I just warned you, there's nudity in some cases. I still believe that it's a very tasteful kind of nudity, but it's also kind of personal. Now, I want to show you a deck that I've actually bought specifically together with the Abyssal Tarot, because I thought that there would have been a really great kind of pairing. And this is the Red Seeds number 3 by Linda Hill, the Oracle cards. Linda Hill has also released, well, obviously the number 1 and number 2 of the Red Seeds Oracle, but also the Red Seeds Tarot, and I think there's another tarot which is called the Red Threads. I will obviously, well, this is the website, but I will link it in the description box below as well. I think all of them are still on print. I could be wrong, but I think they are. The only problem, well, when it comes to, if you live in Australia, if you're like me, then the only problem would be shipping. This deck is very interesting because it was conceived, let's say, during the pandemic. And so, as you can see, there are a lot of reminders to what the main feelings were that we were going through during the pandemic itself. By the way, I just noticed that I have ink spots on my fingers. Sorry about that. I've just been changing the inks on my fountain pens. The beautiful thing about the Red Seeds Oracle is that on the back of the card, so you've got I am isolated, I am social justice, harmony, and so on and so forth, and the images are just absolutely beautiful. Not just the artwork, but I really love also the association of colors. Again, lots of nudity, pretty much every figure is naked, but it's a stylized kind of nudity. It's not photography, as you can tell. It's one of those decks that you need to have in your hands again to get the tactile feel to that I am wealth. Just to give you an example, it's a very sturdy, almost cardboard. It's got the consistency almost of one of those jackets to you know, like a bulk jacket. So it's very sturdy, and all of them, each and every one of them, and I'm just gonna flip it to show you, is referred back to a goddess or also supernatural beings, but it's mostly goddesses. And I believe I saw Baba Yaga. Most of them will be coming from the Greek mythology, but there's more than that, because as we know, Baba Yaga is from the Eastern Europe mythology traditions, Maya. There you go, Baba Yaga, the great mother in Russian folklore, is a crone who confounds all who meet her. Yes, well, confound, I would say it's very mild as a term. We've got the Black Madonna as well, referred to I am she. That's such a beautiful image. So it's a very, very interesting deck, not just because it's a beautiful artwork, it's an excellent cardstock, but it's also because you get so much information on the character that is illustrated in front. If you just flip the card to the back, you've got a quote for each and every card, which is very, very interesting. And then you've got the explanation, a bit of a story about Sulis Minerva, for example, Roman Celtic goddess, etc. And then you've got a bit of an explanation on how to use the card, how to gather the meaning of the card. We've got also a bit of a, let's say, as within, so without, kind of references to the challenge and the gift. So for the Sulis Minerva, we have, for example, a challenge as in oscillation, but the gift would be fluidity. Or for Balgowlah, we've got the challenge as emptiness, and the gift as exuberance, and so on and so forth. Nosai, for example, is in really interesting because it refers back to infection and recovery. So it looks almost as if it were a way to read the cards upright or reversed, whether they, you know, end up one way or another. But let's not, you know, lose any more time on this. What I wanted to show you is how beautiful these two decks are together. There is a sense of grounding that comes from the Oracle deck. The fact that many of the colors, not just the fact that there's resonances pretty much on each and every card, because there's a lot of nudity in the tarot, but there's a lot of nudity in the Oracle deck as well. But there's also a lot of resonances when perhaps we look at directionality, if we look at the colors, for example. And it's very interesting to draw parallels between the two, because it's I believe that the Red Seeds Oracle by itself, it's very powerful, very unique, very interesting. Also, you know, because you just read the backs, for example, and you can use it for meditation, you can use it for journaling, you can use it for your own personal growth, for example. But when you start pairing it up with this deck, with this tarot deck, it actually really finds its purpose. You know, we've got the I am isolated between the 8 of Pentacles and the 7 of Wands, and as we've seen before, I am isolated is Maya. So goddess Maya lived in isolation in a cave, and she's the mother of Hermes after she was unfortunately raped by Zeus. So extrospection and introspection, as within, so without. So this is really bringing us back to that concept of the isolation we've been going through for not just the pandemic, but also I feel that there's more and more coming to the surface the extent to which our psyche has been damaged by the lockdowns. And I'm not criticizing the lockdowns. Please understand, what I'm saying is that obviously there are consequences to everything. What I'm saying is that I believe that now that the physical menace or the physical threat of the virus is waning, even though there's still a lot of people who catch it, but it's not an emergency, or it's not seen as an emergency anymore, we come to terms with the damage that many drastic measures have inflicted upon ourselves, upon our psyche, especially. And I believe that when you get to the point of admitting that to yourself with a lot of compassion, then you open up the way to healing yourself. So we've got the Eight of Pentacles that is saying, yeah, you're doing a great job, go for it, but you're not there yet, okay? The Eight of Pentacles is just the affirmation of having reassessed everything you were doing in the Seven of Pentacles, and then the next card tells you that yes, you're definitely going down the right path, but just not for a moment think that you're actually there, because there's still a lot to do. So you're still at work just as much as before. And the Seven of Wands, which is basically a reinforcer of the Eight of Pentacles, except that it's a reinforcer on the, probably on the fiery side that is brought about the suit of the fire, the suit of wands. So you are against everyone else in this case. So you are isolated. You are isolated. No one is saying that you're wrong, but you are isolated because everyone else is actually fighting against you. So you still have a lot of work to do in order to get rid of that sense of isolation that you felt when you felt like everyone was out there to get you. And mind you, that was the narrative that we heard. Even not, there might have been some hidden agenda, but most of the time I just believe that that's what, the papers, especially in Australia, they were just pointing out that your neighbor was the enemy. And so it felt, for many of us, it felt like we were in a Seven of Wands situation, because we felt like we were the ones against the others. And that kind of isolation that we voluntarily or by law had to go through felt like exacerbated by this sense of being one against the other. Consider your neighbor as your enemy, someone that can infect you. So you need to protect yourself from even the loved ones, because anyone could have been infecting you. And so the Eight of Pentacles tells you that after all of this, you've done a really good job of grounding yourself, because let's not forget that Pentacles is the suit of the earth. So obviously it refers back to an element of grounding, but you still have a lot more to go through. Each and every one of these associations is very powerful, very strong. I really invite you, I don't know if you have these decks. If you do, I really invite you to try them together, because there's a lot of work, not necessarily shadow work, mind you. This to me is not shadow work, it's work that you're doing on yourselves, is work that you do in your personal practice to grow and to just help yourself to get probably out of a tight situation. The combination of these two is in such a way that it will open the door for your intuition to just do the work that is required. So this is the Red Seeds Oracle number 3, and this is the Abyssal Tarot. So the next deck that entered my collection is the Devas of Creation by Cilla Conway. I used to have this deck before. Sorry, I actually used to have the other one, the Multi-Devas of Creation. I don't remember the title of the oracle. It was also referring back to the Devas, but it's, let's say, it was a second version of the this work that Silla has done on with the Devas. I rehomed that one because it was a bit too abstract for me, or perhaps because it wasn't its time, or it wasn't my time to work with it. And I actually got this one because I feel like right now I'm actually, you know, probably more apt to feel this deck resonate with what I'm doing. So this is working with the energies of the universe. The Devas of creation is definitely a myth that you know, needs to be understood. These are very, very powerful forces. I don't know why these, just on a side note, I am not a fan of these, the way in which they split the decks in two, because what happens is that unless it's a very, very, there you go, I knew it. See, there's a lot of chips. So when you have these kind of boxes where you put two, you split the deck in two and you put two parts like that, it actually ends up splitting the, or damaging or chipping the edges of the cards. So be it. It's a beautiful, other than that, it's a beautiful box. I'm not saying anything, but perhaps maybe keep it in one instead of splitting in two. This is the book, the guidebook. Really good guidebook. It's you can have a thumbprint of the card in color, which is very interesting, and it's got a bit of an explanation of that specific card, that specific Deva. And you also have quite a fair bit of room for your annotation, your associations, taking notes, or writing down what you feel is perhaps a keyword associated to that particular Deva. Because the thing is that this deck does not have keywords on the cards themselves. You do have the number, so see here, number 31, for example. I feel that's something that we've, exactly, that's the Dark Knight, that's the Devil, or the Dark Knight of the Soul. This being his many name, the Ferryman. I knew what it was because I had seen that before. So there's a lot that you can do with this book. I use it for personal growth. It's an incredible book. I really, really wish they wrote the titles, at least one keyword on the cards as well. But I've already been using it a couple of times, and there's some cards, because they're stalking cards, they come out 2-3 times in a row. I kid you not. And so I started learning them by heart. But I imagine, you know, if you want to click with the deck, if you want to immediately have a kind of a connection with the deck, it's probably easier when there are keywords. Even though I have to say that Silla's artwork is very conducive of intuition. If you don't know her tarot, there's a couple of tarot decks she's made. 3, I think. One is the Intuitive Tarot, then the Shimmering Veil, and a most recent one which is called the Tarot of Gods and Goddesses. And it's got a really odd kind of shape. It's like a hexagonal shape. And that third one is really beautiful, and it's somehow less abstract. So it looks as if she's actually evolving. The body of her work is actually evolving into perhaps a more defined kind of line work, which, you know, it doesn't say anything on about these decks. I still really, really like them. This is a beautiful card. And I really enjoyed the Shimmering Veil, for example. I had a great time with that deck, and then I passed it on to someone who needed it. But now it's my time with the Devas. I really believe, see, I know that it doesn't probably show on camera, but these cards are all chipped. It's okay. I mean, I really don't mind. But it's just that I really believe it's because, I don't think it's the person who had this deck that sold it to me that damaged the card like that. I really believe that it's because, you know, they have to say like this the whole time. The reason why I brought this up is because I actually believe that even this one pairs up really well with the Abyssal Tarot. So let's have a try, because I haven't had time, and it's a bit of an impromptu kind of pairing, and I might be completely wrong. I have no idea. But let's see. The reason why I'm pairing these two up together is because I believe that the oracle, so the Devils of Creation, really gives you the possibility to use your intuition with the cards. Okay, so this is a different kind of pairings. Why? Because you don't have an oracle in this case with the keywords on the cards. So it's one of those pairs that you can still do the same way. So you can still use the oracle in the center position, with the two tarot cards on the side. But it requires a little bit more effort on your part. So you're actually required, and I'll explain how I do it, and it doesn't mean that it's the way to do it, but it might help someone else. Generally speaking, what I do is, normally when I have keywords, I start from the keyword and then I look at the tarot. In this case, because I don't have keywords, I start from the tarot and then I look at the oracle, and I form an idea of the keyword that may come by looking at the image, but also brought about the presence of the two cards on the sides. So we've got the Ten of Swords and we got the Nine of Cups, which are two cards that are completely clashing, because we got the Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords, to me, the suit of the mind. When you're hitting rock bottom, you've worried yourself sick. Generally speaking, it comes after the 9, in which it's the waking up at 3 a.m. by your anxiety, thinking that every single person you know is going to die, or all of these thoughts. And they call it the hour of the wolf, because it's the moment in which you are vulnerable to any kind of suggestion. There is a neurobiological explanation to that. I'm not going to go into that, but there is just for you to know, it is also due to a chemical process in the brain at that specific time of night. But I don't believe that everything is to be brought back or explained by neurobiology, even though I am studying neurobiology. I believe that there's a lot going on in our mind and in our hearts, in our spirits. And of course, the Ten of Swords reflects that. So you basically arrive to that position in which it's either you're completely done for and you're not getting back up, or you're actually happy about reaching that rock bottom, because you know that you can definitely not fall any further down, but the only way after that is up. So this card can be read in a couple of different ways. The Nine of Cups is the wish come true, if we look at the tradition of the RWS, but it's also the card that tells you that you have to be careful what you wish for. Why? Because it comes after a couple of cards in the cups, suit of cups, that were a bit uncertain. So you have found, for example, you went through a loss in the Five of Cups. After the loss, you think about back at the time in which you still had that person that you lost, or you still had that job, or you still had that peace of mind. You could still sleep through the night because you were still okay. So that's the Six of Cups. And then you find yourself in front of too many choices, and you're really scratching your head, because in the Seven of Cups, even though you can look inside the cups, you don't necessarily know what's going to be okay for you. And the Eight of Cups, either you waited for too long and you couldn't really decide, and you just decided to leave because there's something broken behind, or you actually decide for yourself. There's nothing there that doesn't know you. That's a poem from Rainer Maria Rilke, the Arcade, I don't remember. It's about Apollo, a statue, a torso, the archaic torso of Apollo. And, the poet says, you look at this sculpture, and for there is nothing in your life that doesn't see you or doesn't know you, you must change your life. That's the Eight of Cups for me. So the Nine of Cups is that euphoria you reach after you've made your choice, you left what's broken behind, and that's your wish come true. But you also have to be careful to maintain that momentum. So to me, these images together, is the Ten of Swords and the Nine of Cups, tell me that I need to stop at a certain point I need to, that 8 of cups that pushed me away tells me now to stop and enjoy this moment in which I'm actually congratulating myself on whatever I have achieved, on whatever wish come through, because there might be something that actually still sneaks in the middle of the night and wakes me up with anxiety. Don't fixate on this. Ground yourself in the 9 of Cups and gather much more courage and strength than what you normally would, in order to be able to defeat that anguish, that anxiety that really drives me to the ground. And that's, to me, that's a wishing. That's a falling star. It's a falling star. You wish upon a star. You create in your mind that energy that you need in order to be able to face, to confront the hour of the wolf, whenever you wake up at 3 a.m. with those thoughts that tell you that you're not going to make it. So this is a way of working with this deck that I find really works well. Gee, that's the blackness of the first card. It works really, really well, but as you can see, it's not your typical work of, you know, pairing up a tarot and an oracle deck. It requires a lot of concentration. It requires a lot of perhaps presence of spirit, in the sense that you cannot just flip the cards like that. It would not work. You still really, really have to be there in the moment and understand what you're doing, understand what you're looking at. So this is just a let's say a way in which I, for example, I cultivate my practice, my personal practice, by doing this kind of associations, by doing this kind of meditation and this kind of intuition which is prompted by the cards. So I haven't had these 2 decks for a long time in my collection, but I already found that they work really well together. And there's also a lot of, as I used to call them, resonances and echoes between the cards. I'm very conscious that there's a lot of nudity in the Abyssal Tarot, so I'm just going really quickly. But in any case, so we've seen the Devils of Creation paired up with the Abyssal Tarot. And the next deck we're going to have a look at is the Velida Oracle. This one I wasn't quick enough, but there's actually a tarot deck as well. It's called Velida Woods Tarot, and they would have paired up together really, really well. But the reason, but I'm quite happy that I got this one anyway, because because I was really looking for an oracle deck that were with black background and quite sort of simple, let's say, kind of symbols and simple color scheme that would have paired up, I believe, quite well with the Tarot of the Drowning World, which is here. There's a few oracle decks that I'm pairing up with this tarot deck, but I think that this one is probably my favorite one, because it does remind you of a lot of the features of the tarot, and it really works. And let me say, this deck it's very simple. You can see, I mean, sorry, I'm showing you the actual cards. By the way, really beautiful. Almost, it's a very odd kind of texture. I feel like I want to call it linen style, but it's not your typical linen style. I don't know what it's called. I really like it. I actually like the sound, the tactile feel to it. It fans out like a charm. You can riffle shuffle, you can overhand shuffle, and these are the backs. So I really like the product value, the actual production of this deck. It's as I said before, it's just got, you know, very simple kind of symbology. Got a thistle and a half moon with the fence because of the spike. My husband, he basically says this is a weed for Australians. If you ask any Australian, they tell you that the thistle is a weed. I don't know the rest of the world. I often find that whatever in one country is actually a really revered plant, in other countries called a weed. So it's a bit odd. Personally, I love mint, but my husband hates it because you can't stop it. Once you have a little bit of mint in your backyard, it just takes over everything. but I love it because I make tea. So this, as you can tell, it's a very simple deck. However, it is very beautiful, and also the way in which you do feel the association between the symbols that are painted and the keywords is very straightforward. Well, obviously in some cases it's almost too straightforward with the clover and luck, but it's very beautiful. I like also the combination of colors. I really appreciate this deck. So when I saw it, I thought, you know what, because it's so simple, it might actually pair up really well with the tarot deck, but it's not that simple. And I think it really does, because as you can see, the Tarot of the Drowning World is full of symbols. It's full of things. It's a very busy deck. Very, very busy deck. We got so many flowers, so many elements. Even when there's no humans, for example, in this case, there's like 100 different types of you know, flowers and objects and stuff. Not that I count. But it's very nice. It's a very nice pairing. I think that on the one hand, because the Drowning World kind of, it could eventually feel like it's a darkish kind of deck, but on the other hand, it is apt to interpretation, and it's also very easy to, you know, steer it in a different direction whenever you choose a specific deck to pair it with. Obviously, if I paired it up with the Journey of the Lonely Soul, it would definitely be on the darker side. But because I'm now pairing it up with the Veleda Oracle, which is, in spite of the prevalence of the black in the background, is actually quite a vivacious, it's actually a very vibrant kind of deck. I love this. This is the Page of Cups. I love this card, absolutely beautiful. We've got guide between the Page of Cups and the Chariot card. Obviously you need, that's kind of obvious interpretation, thank you. See, so this deck is actually, this combination is actually good for beginnings, because it's really as if they were taking your hand and guiding you, and now it's telling you that, you know, you really need to know where you're going in order to be able to triumph. Which might sound obvious, but it might not be. Acceptance between now this one is a very special card. So this deck has got more cards than 78, and there's a few major arcana. Le Rêveur is the dreamer, so we've got acceptance between the dreamer and justice, which is a very interesting combination. It's almost as if we were telling the dreamer to go back down to earth and, you know, put your feet on the ground and be grounded. You have to accept the fact that you don't live in the clouds, but you live in a world that actually has its own set of rules. So these two really, I don't know, they communicate with each other. It's one of those combos that if you watch my channel, you'll know that I always say at this point that I don't really need to be here, in the sense that when two decks have this kind of communication, I like to fade away in the background to just let them do their thing and just observe them, and you know, and eventually every now and then just put my comment in there. So this, as you can tell, this is a completely different way to use a combo than what I showed you before with the Devils of Creation and the Abyssal Tarot. This is completely different. This is a divination. This is a guidance kind of combination reading. So these two decks can definitely be used, for example, when you're reading for someone else, also when you're reading for yourself, when you're reading for clients, if you do that too. For example, I will never use, I would use in very, very specific let's say settings, the Devils of Creation together with the Abyssal Tarot. I would not use it unless the client specifically requests that, and I would actually question that request, because I would want to understand why. You know, unless you want to do that kind of work with someone else, but generally speaking, it's something you need to do by yourself. Now, what I wanted to show you is the next deck, and since that the next deck also pairs well with the Tarot of the Drowning World, I'm just gonna remove the Veleda and I'm going to show you, and it's the Pythia Botanica, which is by Leila and Olive. This is, I'm so sorry, I used to know, well, this is from 2016. Okay, let's try and identify that with the year of production, because I know that there's like 3 versions, and I honestly do not cannot associate the year of production with the number of the edition. But you know, this is from 2016, and let's put some more card in here. So we've got again the Tarot of the Drowning World with this really beautiful imagery, but also a bit odd. I mean, you have to get used to this kind of decks, because this production, you know, this it's actually a press house or something like that. I don't remember how they call it. They do also, they're the same creators of the Carnival at the End of the World. And as always, the books are just absolutely brilliant. I highly recommend it, especially the Drowning World, which is actually not called, the companion book is called the Le Tarot du Monde Perdu, so of the Lost World, not the Drowning World, which is interesting. Because it's almost as if it were one step ahead, because drowning still includes the sense of there is no finality in drowning, even though there is a direction. But Le Monde Perdu, so the Lost World, it's already, there is a finality to that. So as I was saying, these two, so the Pythia Botanica and the Drowning World, pair up quite well together as well. As you can tell, there's still that element, botanical element, that is recurrent. What I really like, on top of, let's say, obviously the common, you know, symbols that you can have, is the fact that there is a similarity also in the colors. So the Pythia Botanica, contrary to I think almost all of the others, other deck produced by Leila and Olive, doesn't have borders, as you can tell. So the Ophidia Rosa and also the Maiden, I think the Maiden Oracle and also the Tarot Constellation have borders, if I'm not wrong. I could be wrong, apologies for that. But this one doesn't, and I think that because of that, this actually is very it's a very good thing when you look at this kind of combination, because it really flows. It's not stopped by the borders, by an hypothetical border, let's say. And I also really like the association in this oracle deck between the plant in specific and the keyword. So we've got Sage with Ancient Sight, for example, so the Seer. And we got the 5 of Pentacles and the King of Swords, which is a really powerful reading. So it's basically, it's recognizing the property of a seer, of you know, of the King of Swords. That's amazing. It's one way in which I actually look at the King of Swords, is the seer, is the one that actually sees everything, sees through everything most of the time. And we got the 5 of Pentacles, that indicates, you know, that kind of loss, the kind of either a financial loss or just being left out in the cold. For me is the key word, the key concept of the 5 of Pentacles. So perhaps you need to do a little bit of introspection in order to understand what actually happened here. Use that sight that is not the proper sight. It's a sight that comes from wisdom, because let's not forget that the King of Swords comes after the whole suit of swords. So it's you know, it's the whole journey through the suit of swords that actually gives the king, or the culmination of the suit, the insight, the powerful insight or ancient sight into the matter. So perhaps you should, you know, perhaps you should listen to that if there is a mentor in your life that corresponds to a King of Swords, for example. So it's, again, really beautiful pairing. There's not as many colors in the Pythia Botanica as there are in the Drowning World, of course, because we're looking at photography and we're looking at illustrations. Fair enough. but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing for two decks to be working well together. So here we go, the Pitia Botanica. Now I'm going to leave the Pitia Botanica here, and I'm going to take out the Ophelia Rosa, because this also entered my collection recently. I've been looking for this deck for forever. I know that it's still on print. You can find it on Layla and Olive website. However, as always with me, you know, living in Australia, it's always the same problem. Whenever you look at the shipping costs, it is prohibitive. And when they even ship to Australia, because that's not always the case. I absolutely love the backs of this deck. That is the same image that you have on the box. This, it's just out of this world beautiful. I love the gilding because it's that kind of really high quality gold, but matte gold gilding that doesn't chip. So really, really beautiful production. Absolutely stoked with this deck. It's a very beautiful battery card finish kind of feel. You know, the cardstock is very important, as I always say. But let's have a look at how these two pair up together. Now, generally speaking, it feels like it's a bit of a cheating when you pair up two decks that come from the same creator. But I don't necessarily feel that way. I mean, I'm the one that has to, you know, take advantage of the reading. And if it clicks, it clicks. I mean, why precluding myself the possibility to have two decks that actually work really well together and having such a joy, because it is joyful when you find a good combination. Of course, it is easier for a combo like this to pair up well together, and it's, you know, it doesn't say a lot about my skills of pairing up decks, but sometimes I just need something to work, and I just don't want to rack my brain and think about what else could be, you know, pair up well with these. And besides, there might be a reason why the creators have actually conceived these two decks in this way. Perhaps they actually need to be read together. So don't discard it. That's what I wanted to say. Don't discard pairing up, for example, the Tarot of the Mystical Moment with the Oracle of the Mystical Moment. I know that it sounds like a no-no, like in the tarot community, everyone will say that's really lazy. But if it works for you, it works for you. At the end of the day, you're the one that has to feel like you're making progress, or whatever the issue is at stake, you're the one that has to feel that you're doing something for it. You're doing something to help yourself, or you're just enjoying whatever it is that you're doing, pairing up two decks. Coincidentally, these two are really beautiful together, but I like the Pitia Botanica, but I love the Ophelia Rosa. It's just so beautiful. I mean, look at this Page of Wands. It's incredible. And also the choice behind, because when it comes to plants, you kind of have your indication from so many books. There's, you know, a plethora of books that tell you what kind of keyword you can apply to which plant. But when it comes to a tarot, you have to, the effort is a bit bigger, because you also have to think about the meaning of the card. So you have to find that kind of association, which is not always easy. So I really appreciate this deck. It's absolutely really, really beautiful. So Ophelia Rosa and Pitia Botanica. And last but not least, I finally got a hold of this particular edition of the Star Child Tarot by Danielle Noel. This is the tarot size, let's say, Akashic. Even this one is from a Facebook group, so it's secondhand. I really don't mind. It actually came in excellent conditions, and it came with the, you know, this one came with the let's say the companion book that was not fitting in the box. I don't know if you remember, because it was a few years ago. And this lady that sold me this deck actually had never opened the guidebook, so it's like new. Let's put it this way. I was so happy to have found this, because I used to have the other edition, the Oracle size edition, and it was too big for me, for my hands. And so I'm really, really happy that I found this one. I am definitely going to study the guidebook, because I imagine it to be very, very interesting. This is, well, you're probably very familiar with this deck anyway. I mean, it's nothing new to me either, in the sense that, of course, I knew how this deck looked, I knew the energy, I knew the vibes of this deck. It's still, you know, it's still a really major experience to actually hold it in your hands, going through the cards, looking at them, just feel yourself getting to connect to the images and the way in which the card meanings are expressed through the photo. This is a photo collage, of course. It's a really beautiful deck. What I wanted to show you, and this is one of my favorite star cards, although when I saw the star card from the Slow Tarot, I said, okay, that's a new favorite. Because that star card in the Slow Tarot is just absolutely gorgeous. I wanted though to show you this deck pair up with this oracle. And okay, so the story behind this oracle is called When Olga Speaks. It was a limited run of 200 copies on Make Plain Cards. It's now gone. I was lucky enough to have gotten a hold of a copy. It was very quick. They printed it super quick, and they shipped it from the US to Australia. It only took 1 week. I was really shocked. I was like, that can't be, it's a different deck. So this one was a Kickstarter campaign that was not successful, simply because I believe that in summer no one is really paying attention to Kickstarter, or you're on holiday, everyone's on holiday, and you're not supposed to be on your phone. Okay, let's put it this way. But the artist, I know the Instagram handle, it's artygirlbelike. I will link it in the description box below. But I received confirmation that they're actually going to relaunch the Kickstarter soonish, let's say, in autumn. I highly recommend it. It's a photographic collage. When Olga Speaks referred back to the fact that the artist grandmother was called Olga, and she really had this wonderful wisdom of the crone, and you can really tell coming from the cards when you look at the images. This deck is superb because it pairs well with a number of decks. It's just the number one deck when it comes to my decision whenever I use a collage deck, but also photographic deck that is not necessarily a collage, like the Somnia, but also the Rosebud Tarot, which is a collage deck, or the Ritual Tarot, which is another collage deck, or the Voyager even. The Voyager, generally speaking, is actually rather difficult to pair up with another deck, but it pairs up really well with this one. The Telesma, what else? Well, there's a number of photo collage decks, of course. So I think there's another one which is really cool. What's it called? I don't remember the name. But there's a lot going on in the cards, because there's this element of photography that obviously is recalled by the images in both the tarot and the oracle. But at the same time, there's also a lot of that's really strong conversation going on. The tarot deck, because it's got this kind of tendency of the colors to go towards the purple and the green, and as you can see, which is not necessarily the same on the oracle deck. Perhaps it looks at first that it might not pair up well together, but the energies and the vibe are exceptionally good. So it's that kind of, again, that kind of conversation that doesn't necessarily need any kind of hard labor from your part, you or the reader. You just sit back and relax and flip the cards, because they will have this kind of exchange that will take place between them. It is that kind of energy that they really, you know, that it really happens in front of your eyes. And I really, really like this. And now I can actually say, because I wasn't sure until a couple of days ago, I didn't want to talk about this deck because I wasn't sure 100% that it was going to be relaunched. Because I don't want to talk about a deck that I know that no one can get. It just doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes I do it for very specific reason, whenever it's a deck that it's out of print, but perhaps it's going to be reprinted, so of course I want to show it. But in this case, it was never actually printed. It was never, well, it's difficult to categorize it, but in any case, now it's official. And I will make sure to talk about this deck again whenever it is the Kickstarter campaign is launched again. Because I really believe that more people, more than 200 people, should have access to this deck. It is that beautiful. I'm just gonna leave you with this soul ties image, which is absolutely so poignant and powerful and intense. So these were the decks that entered my collection in the last perhaps couple of weeks. I just wanted to pop by and say hi and show you these decks. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. If you liked it, then push the like button please, and subscribe if you haven't already. More to come. Have a great day.